They made her a podcast episode. She made herself the whole damn plot. Evelyn Carter didn't scream when she heard her grandchildren dissect her life through a vent in the kitchen floor. She didn't plead when they titled their debut Toxic Elders and made her the centerpiece. She didn't run. By sunrise, the check was written, the mic was claimed, and the truth she buried under decades of discipline and duct-taped dignity was loaded like a weapon. They thought they were documenting generational damage. She was about to teach them what survival actually looked like. No edits, no apologies, no silence. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. It started with a laugh, Jake's low, easy chuckle, echoing through the heat vent in the kitchen floor. Evelyn froze mid-step, spatula still in hand, the scent of browning butter and cinnamon lingering in the air. And we're calling it Toxic Elders, Jake said, his voice clear and amplified, unmistakably recorded. Episode 1. Our grandmother, Evelyn Carter. The spatula clattered into the sink. Evelyn edged toward the basement door, not opening it, just listening. We love her, Mia chimed in. But sometimes love doesn't mean silence. It means honesty. A pause, then a harsher tone. Hers. She controlled everything. What we wore, who we saw. Hell, she told me I smiled too big in photos once. Said it made me look desperate. Evelyn's breath caught. That moment, an offhand comment from years ago, now spotlighted like a crime scene. Jake continued, gentler. I remember asking to see a therapist after Dad left. She said we didn't air out weakness in public, like pain was a family secret. The cinnamon rolls in the oven began to burn. The air turned bitter, smoky. She didn't move. Couldn't. They kept going. Mia recounting Evelyn's surprise visits to her dorm room. Jake describing the way Evelyn once corrected his posture during a graduation photo. Laughter followed. Casual but sharp, slicing through years of sacrifice. Then silence. A void opened where she thought she'd hear a defense. Some nuance. But it never came. Later that evening, her phone rang. Linda's name flashed across the screen. Evelyn considered letting it go to voicemail. But old habits snapped her fingers into motion. You heard it? Linda demanded. Of course I heard it, Evelyn replied, tone cool. They're using my electricity to record their betrayal. They're humiliating you. Us. I told them not to start this crap. I told them. You did? Evelyn asked, because it sounds like they had a script rehearsed for weeks. Linda exhaled sharply. Tell them to take it down. You still control the Wi-Fi, don't you? Evelyn's eyes drifted toward the basement door. A beat passed. I'm not pulling plugs like a dictator, she said finally. That's half of what they're accusing me of. Jesus, Mom. You're seriously letting this stand. I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? I'm saying, Evelyn paused. I'm saying maybe it's time I tell my version. The call ended without resolution. By 9, Evelyn had poured herself a second glass of Pinot and dialed Rose. Her sister answered with the sound of rustling fabric and a tired yawn. Am I calling too late? Evelyn asked. It's fine. I'm up folding laundry. What happened? They made me episode 1. Oh, a pause. That podcast. They called me a control freak. Made it sound like I was running a Soviet prison instead of a household. You kinda did run it like a principal's office. That's not the point. Rose sighed. What do you want from this? An apology? A retraction? I want balance. Evelyn muttered. A mic. A seat at the table. Well, Rose said slowly. Maybe you should buy your way in. Money talks louder than guilt. Evelyn didn't respond right away. Her fingers tapped the stem of the wine glass, each click sharper than the last. Then she stood, walked to her laptop, and opened a blank email. To talk at toxicelderspod.com. Subject sponsorship proposal kids. Interesting debut. Sharp editing. Questionable character analysis. Here's the deal. I'll fund your little project, upgrade the mics, cover your hosting fees, even throw in snacks. In return, I get one episode. My rules. My words. Or, I become your first sponsor and your last. Sincerely, Grandma Evelyn P.S. This time when I control the narrative, I'll do it with a smile. She hit send, closed the laptop, and leaned back in her chair. Evelyn didn't wait for permission. She wrote the check before they even replied, slid it into an envelope with the kind of precision she used to reserve for disciplinary memos. The next morning, it sat on the kitchen table like a loaded weapon. Jake and Mia arrived mid-afternoon, their steps hesitant as they entered. No hugs, no casual banter, just the smell of strong coffee, the scratch of chairs being pulled out, and the ticking wall clock that suddenly felt too loud. So, Jake said, glancing at the envelope. You're serious. I don't bluff, Evelyn said flatly, pushing the check across the table. I fund your podcast. In return, I get my say, unedited. No dramatic cuts, no ironic music cues. Mia folded her arms. So you're buying airtime to justify being you? No, Evelyn replied, her tone as sharp as a snap ruler. I'm investing in narrative equity. You told a version of the truth. I'm offering mine. Jake leaned back, running a hand through his hair. This could blow everything up. Maybe it needs to, she said. Mia exchanged a glance with her brother. If we do this, there's no going back. Back to what? Evelyn asked. Quiet resentment and polite Thanksgivings? Let's not pretend we were some damn Hallmark family before this. The silence that followed was thick, awkward. But it was real. That night, Evelyn sat cross-legged on the floor of her study, a pile of worn spiral-bound journals around her. Each spine was labeled by year, written in her tidy principal's penmanship. She hadn't opened them in decades. She flipped through pages of rage, scribbled during Linda's teenage years, entries where the word ungrateful showed up far too often. Notes about sleepless nights after her husband left. One haunting line repeated in several years. If I fall apart, who's holding the roof? The pages didn't excuse her, but they revealed her. Midway through rereading 1996, her phone buzzed. Linda, Evelyn answered. I figured you'd call. I just got off the phone with Jake. You're really doing this? I am. Linda's voice tightened. You're throwing the match on the whole bridge, Mom. The one we barely patched. No, Evelyn said quietly. I'm walking across it, and I'm dragging the truth behind me. You think this helps? I think silence already hurt enough people. The line went dead without another word. Evelyn didn't redial. By morning, her voice recorder was set up on the dining room table. No script, no outline, just the truth. She pressed record. I'm Evelyn Carter. And apparently, I'm Toxic Elders #1. Let's begin. Her voice wavered at first, but steadied with each breath. She spoke of her marriage unraveling like threads pulled by invisible hands. She talked about fear, the kind that wraps itself around a single mother's spine and makes her grip too tight. I told my daughter to be quiet when she cried too loud. I told my grandson therapy was weakness because I was terrified he'd learn how broken I really was. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She offered context, and in some strange way, it felt more courageous. Hours later, she emailed the audio file with a subject line that read, My turn. 2 days passed, then 3. Nothing. Evelyn told herself she didn't care. That silence was its own answer. But on the 4th night, Rose called. They're teasing a surprise live episode, her sister said, voice crackling through speakerphone, with a guest. Guess who? Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Please don't say your cat again. Rose chuckled. You and someone else. They're not saying who. Evelyn stared at the dark screen of her laptop. Evelyn Carter stared at the red blinking light on the microphone like it was a loaded weapon. They were live. A stream of notifications flooded the screen beside her. Emojis, usernames, reactions in real time. Jake sat across from her, tense but composed. Maya hovered near the soundboard, her expression unreadable, except for the slight bite of her lower lip. Evelyn's hands curled around her mug, the ceramic warm but insufficient against the cold coil tightening in her chest. Her throat was dry, her pulse loud. Jake leaned into the mic. Welcome back to Toxic Elders. Tonight we're doing something different. You've heard our stories, now you'll hear hers. Evelyn breathed in, steady and slow. I'm Evelyn Carter. And apparently, I'm what generational trauma looks like with a pension plan. A nervous chuckle rippled from Jake, but Maya didn't smile. Evelyn continued. I raised 2 kids on a single teacher's salary in a house where the heater broke every other December. My husband left when Linda was 12, just vanished into a new zip code. The weight didn't come in one blow. It dripped, daily. Mortgage notices, empty fridges, broken water heaters. I held us together with duct tape and discipline. The live chat began scrolling faster. She's humanizing herself. Excuses already. Let her speak. Jake folded his arms. You say you were holding things together, but did you ever stop to think about how tightly you were holding us? Evelyn didn't flinch. I didn't have the luxury of softness. If I cried, Linda fell apart. If I hesitated, bills didn't get paid. But grounding me for asking for therapy, Jake's voice sharpened. That wasn't strength. That was fear dressed up as control. Evelyn swallowed hard. Yes, it was. I was terrified of what that therapist might uncover, of what you might learn about me, or your father. A pause stretched between them. Maya's voice, quieter but colder, cut through. I texted you once from college, said I was overwhelmed. You told me, don't be dramatic, just finish your assignment. Evelyn turned to her. You sent that message while I was sitting in an ER with Rose. She thought she was having a heart attack. I panicked. I replied fast and wrong. Maya blinked. Her expression softened slightly, but the wall stayed up. Evelyn took a deep breath. I didn't just mess up. I bruised people. I thought I was protecting you from life's sharp edges, but I became one myself. That's my truth. The screen lit up again. She's owning it. Still not enough. Ask about the graduation incident. Jake glanced at his phone, eyes widening. He tapped something rapidly. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. What is it? Jake looked up. We've got a live caller, surprise guest. Maya's mouth fell open. Wait, who? A voice crackled through the headset. This is Linda. Evelyn's back straightened. Her heart skipped. Hi, Mom. Linda's voice wasn't warm, but it wasn't icy either. Just tired. I wasn't planning to do this, but I've been listening. And I think people need to know. She didn't just hold us too tightly. She held us up when everything else collapsed. Jake blinked. You're defending her now? I'm not absolving her. Linda replied. But she worked a second job cleaning classrooms, just so I could have a damn flute for band. Remember that, Mom? Evelyn closed her eyes. I remember. Linda's voice cracked. You were hard. But you never left. Not once. And maybe we needed less fear and more grace. But don't pretend you didn't love us like hell. The silence after her call felt like the room had exhaled. Even the chat paused for a beat. Jake cleared his throat. That wasn't what I expected. Evelyn looked across the table at her grandchildren. 2 people she'd helped raise, hurt, and now, maybe, begun to reach. I'm not here to rewrite history, she said into the mic. I'm just making sure mine didn't get erased. Maya leaned toward her laptop. Her eyes darted across the screen. Guys, she whispered. The chat's exploding. Half of them are calling you brave, Grandma. The other half think we're giving the villain a redemption arc. Jake refreshed the feed, and we just hit 100,000 listeners. It started with a single tweet. Evelyn Carter, manipulative matriarch or misunderstood survivor. #ToxEldersLive. By morning, the hashtag was trending. Evelyn sat in her kitchen, the scent of black coffee hanging in the air like smoke from a slow burn. Her phone buzzed on the table, rattling against the ceramic coaster. Another notification, then another, and another. Each one was a comment, a post, a think piece from someone who had never stepped inside her house, but felt bold enough to dissect her life in 280 characters or less. She admitted guilt. Sure, but that doesn't erase generational abuse. This woman raised 2 kids alone, And now y'all want to cancel her for being tough? Linda enabled it all, and now wants sympathy. Nah, I'd give anything to hear my grandmother own up like that. Respect. Some praised her courage. Others wanted her canceled. The rest just watched the wildfire grow. Evelyn refreshed the feed again. One thread had nearly 40,000 replies, and a photo of her from the podcast's live stream. Mid-sentence, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. The caption beneath read, "The face of toxic grace." She shut the laptop and stared at her reflection in the microwave door. Was that really how they saw her now? A villain who found the mic too late. Her phone rang. "Linda, have you seen it?" her daughter asked, voice sharp. Evelyn hesitated. "Seen what? The internet lighting me on fire, or the ones tossing you in after me?" Linda's sigh came ragged through the line. "One of my so-called friends tagged me in a video montage. Every time I brushed off your behavior growing up, every time I said, 'Mom's just old school,' apparently, that makes me complicit now." Evelyn rubbed her temple. "People don't want nuance. They want villains and victims. Makes it easier to pick sides. Well, they've picked, and I'm roadkill." Evelyn didn't know what to say. She had tried to control everything her whole life, and now the narrative had spun into chaos neither of them could stop. An email pinged. From julianmkcloud@gmail.com. Subject, "Thank you for your honesty. I just wanted to say, hearing you own your mistakes gave me the courage to reach out to my estranged dad. We spoke for the first time in 10 years. He didn't apologize, but he listened. And I found something close to peace. Thank you, Evelyn. Truly." Evelyn read it twice, then a third time. For all the fire raining down, small green shoots of healing were sprouting in unexpected places. Still, tension crackled inside the house like a frayed wire. Upstairs, Jake and Mia's voices rose. "This was never supposed to be a family redemption arc," Mia snapped. "We were telling the truth, our truth." Jake fired back, louder. "Yeah, and now thousands of people are listening. Don't we have a responsibility to evolve with the story?" Evelyn sat on the stairs, listening. "You're trying to make it palatable," Mia continued. "So we don't feel guilty, so people don't call us cruel." "No," Jake said, quieter now. "I'm trying to figure out if the truth can make room for grace. And maybe it should." A door slammed. Silence. Later that evening, Evelyn called Rose. "They're not ready for what comes next," she said, staring out at the rain dripping from the gutter, a slow rhythmic patter against the porch. "No one ever is," Rose replied. "You opened a wound on air, Ev. Don't be surprised when it bleeds. I didn't think it would get this public. You went live in front of 100,000 people. Of course it's public. You built the stage. Now you better build the boundaries too." Evelyn nodded, though her chest felt tight. "Part of me wants to walk away, pull the money, delete the whole thing. But I see what it's doing, to them, to strangers, to me, and I don't want to run from that." Rose's voice softened. "Then stand. Just know the ground isn't solid anymore." Night came heavy and restless. Evelyn moved through her house like a ghost, turning off lights, double-checking the locks. Her steps echoed. The hum of the refrigerator sounded louder than usual, like it too was bracing for impact. At 1:32 a.m., her phone rang. "No caller ID," she answered, half asleep. "Hello?" A male voice, low and distorted, crackled through the speaker. "You think you're the only one with a story? Stop the podcast sponsorship, or the next episode's not about you. It's about what we can ruin." The line went dead. Evelyn sat up in bed, every nerve awake. The envelope was cream-colored and thick, far too formal to be anything but bad news. It had no return address, just Evelyn's full name typed neatly in the center. No misses, no warmth. Her stomach sank as she slid her finger beneath the flap, the paper slicing clean and cold. She unfolded the letter in 3 sharp creases. "This letter serves as formal notice of a cease and desist regarding your public and potentially defamatory statement." Her name appeared 5 times. So did toxic elders. And near the end, in bold, Continued sponsorship and publication of these statements may result in legal action. The signature at the bottom was from Linda's attorney. Evelyn let the letter fall to the table, her fingers suddenly tingling. She could hear the clock in the hallway ticking. The refrigerator hummed, and beneath it all, the echo of her own pulse, slow but rising. Harold's office smelled faintly of tobacco and dust, the same way it had since the late 90s, when Evelyn first asked him to draft her will. He peered at the letter through thick lenses, lips pressed into a line that meant trouble. "This isn't a lawsuit," he finally said, "but it's a warning shot. She's trying to scare you off the air. She's using a lawyer like a leash," Evelyn muttered. "She wants me to heal." Harold looked over his glasses. "She's worried, probably embarrassed. You've become, let's just say, visible." Evelyn crossed her arms. "Is it slander if it's true?" "It's defamation only if you can't prove it," Harold said. "Do you have documentation, journals, emails, anything to support your side?" "I've got decades of journals and a memory like a steel trap." "Good, keep records of everything. And don't retaliate on air." "Not directly." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "What if I read the letter out loud on the podcast?" Harold's smile twitched at the corner. "You didn't hear me say no." Back at the house, the tension hung thick in the air. Jake was pacing in the hallway, earbuds in, voice clipped. "They're trying to muzzle us," he said, pulling the earbuds out. "We need to push back, post a response, drop another episode tonight." Mia sat on the couch, knees drawn to her chest. "Do you guys even hear yourselves? This is family, not clickbait, not content." Jake stopped. "They made it legal first. So what? We lawyer up and burn the last bridge we've got." Evelyn stepped in, holding the letter like a flag. "I'm reading it on air. Every line. People deserve to know what happens when you speak hard truths." Mia looked up, eyes wide. "That's not transparency. That's gasoline." "I'm not hiding behind lawyers," Evelyn replied. "I've hidden enough." The next episode went live the following evening. Evelyn read the cease and desist in her clearest principal voice, then paused. "I won't be intimidated into silence," she said calmly. "Not by blood, not by fear, not anymore." The comments exploded within seconds. "This just got real. She's standing her ground. Respect, family drama or public reckoning." The numbers surged, downloads, streams, followers. The story had evolved from generational wounds to courtroom whispers, and people couldn't look away. Later that night, Rose called. "I assume you've read your hate mail?" "I've skimmed the threats," Evelyn replied dryly. "I saved the death wishes for breakfast." "Be smart, Ev. Keep a log, record calls." This stopped being just emotional the moment a lawyer entered the chat. "I know," Evelyn said, "but I won't back down." "Good. Just don't bleed on the mic every night. Protect yourself." At 11:47 p.m., Evelyn's phone rang. Unknown number. Again. She hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Carter," a low voice said. Male, calm, no distortion this time. "You want to end this without destroying what's left of your family?" Evelyn didn't speak. "There's a way," the caller continued. "Let's call it a private settlement. A quiet walk off." "What are you offering?" she asked coldly. "It's not what I'm offering, it's what I know." The video file sat on Evelyn's screen like a dare. No subject line, no context. Just family_evidence.mp4, and the memory of that low, deliberate voice. She clicked play. The footage was grainy, clearly taken from an old camcorder. It opened on a sunlit backyard barbecue, dated July 4th, 2004. Kids ran through sprinklers. Adults lounged in plastic chairs. Evelyn's voice could be heard faintly in the background, telling Jake to slow down before someone slipped. Then the camera turned toward a heated conversation near the shed. Linda, red-faced, arguing with someone just out of frame. "I don't care what she said, Brenda." Linda snapped. "Mom twists things. If we repeat her side of it, we're just feeding her fantasy." The shot shifted. Brenda stepped into view. Evelyn gasped. Brenda Carmichael, her estranged cousin, a woman she hadn't spoken to since 1997. They'd fallen out after a brutal disagreement over their parents' estate, and Evelyn hadn't heard her name since. But Brenda was the one in the video. And now Evelyn realized she had been the voice on the phone. An hour later, her phone rang again. Same number. This time, Evelyn answered before the first ring finished. "Why now?" she asked. No greeting. "I saw your episode," Brenda said, her voice low but no longer veiled. "You finally broke the silence, and I figured it was time I did too. I thought you wanted nothing to do with this family. I wanted nothing to do with lies. There's a difference." Evelyn's grip on the phone tightened. "Then speak." "I've got documents," Brenda said. "Letters, financial records, emails from Linda, things that show the story's been twisted for a long time." "What's your angle?" "I don't want money. I want truth. And I want peace. We all deserved better." There was a pause. Then Brenda added, "We should mediate before the lawyers make it permanent. If we don't stop this, none of us will recover from what comes next." The next day, Brenda came to the house. Evelyn didn't hug her, didn't invite her in immediately. She just held the door and watched her cousin's expression as she stepped across the threshold for the first time in nearly 30 years. Brenda placed a thick folder on the kitchen table and slid it across like a peace offering. "Read it. You'll see I'm not bluffing." Jake sat nearby, mic rolling, silently recording every sound, every breath. The folder contained copies of emails from Linda to Brenda discussing how to manage Evelyn's narrative if things ever got too public. There were also records showing miscommunications about Evelyn's alleged cutting off of family members, most of which had been fueled by assumption, not action. Jake looked up from the pile. "This changes things. It complicates them," Evelyn corrected. "But truth usually does." He leaned forward. "Can I interview you? For the next episode, people need to hear this from someone else's mouth for once." Brenda hesitated, then nodded. "One condition. I speak as a family member, not a gossip column. No clickbait. Deal." Later that evening, Evelyn called Linda. "We have a problem," she said flatly. "I know," Linda replied. "You're dragging more people into this." "No," Evelyn said. "I didn't reach out to Brenda. She came to me, and she's not the villain you painted her as."
Silence.
Finally, Linda exhaled. "What do you want, Mom?" "Mediation. One session. No cameras. No microphones. Just us, and someone neutral in the room." "Fine." 2 days later, a box arrived at Evelyn's doorstep. Heavy. No return address. Inside, neatly bundled letters, aged envelopes worn at the crease. The top one was addressed to her, in her late husband's handwriting. Postmarked March 1989. She held the letter to her chest, heart pounding. Her husband had died in 1991. Whatever was in those envelopes had waited in silence for over 3 decades, until now. Evelyn's hands trembled as she slid her finger beneath the brittle flap of the first envelope, the paper dry and crackling like autumn leaves. The date, March 3, 1989, was scrawled in her husband's distinctive looping cursive. He had been dead 33 years. But suddenly, he was in the room. "Evelyn, if you're reading this, I've probably chickened out again. I know I've been distant. I'm not cheating. I swear to God. I've been planning to leave the job. I just didn't want to scare you.
There's something bigger I'm chasing.
Something I didn't think I deserved to want until now." Evelyn sat back, breath shallow. Her late husband Thomas had died in a car crash in 1991. She'd always believed he'd been working late that night. One more responsibility, one more sacrifice. But these letters whispered another story. A man trying to leave behind the weight of a career. A man suffocating under obligation. One too proud to admit he was breaking.
No.
One letter mentioned Linda.
She started lying to you, Ev.
She told me she's been skipping school. I didn't want to pile it on, but you need to know. You've been holding this whole thing together too long, and it's showing. You're harder than you used to be. She sees it. I see it. That line hit harder than she expected. By the time Evelyn reached the 6th letter, it was nearly midnight. Her living room was littered with opened envelopes and the faint scent of rosewood from an old box of stationery that had stayed sealed for decades. Outside, rain tapped against the windows, but inside it was quieter than it had been in months. She took a breath, opened her laptop, and hit record. The next podcast episode was unlike any before. "This is Evelyn Carter," she said, voice steady but raw. "And today I'm not offering rebuttals. I'm reading letters from a man none of you ever got to know well. My husband, your grandfather." She read excerpts, carefully chosen, but not sanitized. "I failed to protect you from yourself sometimes.
Deb.
And I think that failure became your armor. Ivlinda is slipping through the cracks we pretend aren't there. If I don't come back from this trip, tell her I saw it all. I just didn't know how to stop it." Jake sat silently in the corner, eyes lowered. Mia leaned forward, listening so intently she barely blinked. By the end of the recording, the air in the room felt different, less like confrontation, more like confession. Jake finally broke the silence. "We've been telling the story like it started with us, but it didn't, did it?" "No," Evelyn said. "It never does." Later that week, Rose stopped by with muffins, and the kind of wisdom that only came from losing friends, marriages, and illusions over time. "You could turn bitter," she said, sipping coffee. "No one would blame you. But bitterness is just grief that's overstayed its welcome." Evelyn stared at the letters. "How do I forgive ghosts?" "You don't," Rose replied. "You forgive yourself for carrying them too long." The next surprise came quietly. Linda called. No voicemail, just a ring. Evelyn let go. Unanswered the first 2 times. On the third, she picked up.
"I heard the episode," Linda said.
"And? I didn't know he wrote those letters." "Neither did I." There was a long pause. "I've been replaying everything," Linda said softly. "And I see it differently now. I blamed you for the pressure, but maybe I just never asked why you were holding everything so tight." Evelyn's throat tightened. "You're not the only one who misunderstood." "I'm not ready to fix it all," Linda admitted, "but I'm ready to talk." They planned the gathering for Sunday. Just the immediate family. No cameras, no podcast gear. Jake and Mia agreed, cautiously optimistic. Linda would bring her husband, Mark, Brenda too, if she felt safe. Evelyn baked her famous cornbread because some things didn't need rewriting. The morning of the gathering arrived cloudy, the air thick with Seattle drizzle. Evelyn set the table herself. Ceramic plates, linen napkins, and a vase of tulips Rose had dropped off the night before. There was a nervous rhythm to the way she moved, like setting a stage she wasn't sure the actors would stay for. She went to the front door to check if the porch cushions were damp, and stopped cold. The door was cracked open. A sliver of cold wind slipped through the gap. Her hands went numb as she reached for the handle and pushed it wider. The latch had been broken. Inside, the foyer light was still on. A muddy footprint stained the welcome mat. The smell of earth and something faintly metallic hung in the air. She stepped forward, heart pounding. The letters. She rushed to the study. The letters were gone. The front door still hung slightly ajar, swaying with each gust of wind, as if mocking her. Evelyn stood just inside the threshold, her breath shallow, her eyes tracking the muddy print on the hardwood floor like a hunter. In the study, the air felt colder, like someone had opened a window to let the past slip out. The drawers of her desk had been yanked open, papers scattered like leaves across the floor. But it was the gap on the bookshelf that gutted her most. The box of letters, gone. Behind her, Rose's footsteps echoed cautiously down the hall. She stopped in the doorway, lips parting when she saw the mess. "Oh my God," Rose whispered. "Evelyn, they took the letters," Evelyn said flatly, still frozen, "and a journal. The green one, 1991. Rose stepped closer, scanning the room. The lock on the back door, busted. Evelyn blinked, the panic giving way to cold calculation. They didn't take the TV or the silver, just the story. The police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers with sympathetic eyes and not enough answers. No sign of forced entry besides the broken latch. No fingerprints, No shoe tread patterns they could lift. No cameras on this quiet street. I know how this sounds, Evelyn told them, arms crossed tight over her chest. But whoever did this didn't want valuables. They wanted silence. The younger officer, barely older than Jake, nodded slowly. We'll file a full report. Let us know if anything else turns up missing. Evelyn handed them a photo of the box and a brief list, but she knew what she'd lost couldn't be cataloged by item number. It was context, evidence, memory. Back at home, Jake and Mia were already uploading. They turned Evelyn's dining table into a war room. Cords, microphones, a spare laptop, and a camera on standby. Jake posted a message across all channels. We've had a break-in. Important documents stolen. If you followed Evelyn's story, we're asking the community to stay alert. We won't be intimidated. A special live episode is coming. Mia added, truth isn't safe. That's why it matters. Within minutes, replies poured in, listeners offering support, some even pledging money for a security system. Evelyn stood by the kitchen window, watching shadows bend across the lawn. Her reflection looked older than usual, not just from age, but from exposure. Linda called as the sun began to set. I heard, she said, voice taut. Are you okay? Evelyn hesitated. They didn't hurt me. That's not what I meant. A beat of silence passed between them. I can come by, Linda offered, just to be safe. Or send Mark. You shouldn't be alone right now. I'm not alone, Evelyn replied, then softened. But thank you. That night, the mic went live again. Evelyn sat in the same chair she'd used for her very first episode. Her voice steadier now, sharpened by grief, fortified by purpose. We were never just talking into microphones, she said. We were reclaiming what was taken. Stories, truth, dignity. And now someone has tried to take it again. But I am still here. Applause lit up the live chat. Emojis, messages, hashtags. The floodgates reopened. Then static. The mic crackled, abruptly cut out. The screen flickered. The distorted voice still echoed in her ears. You've been warned once. This is your last. Then nothing, no outro music, no signal. Just digital silence pulsing in place of her voice. For a full 10 seconds, she stared into the void where her face had been.
And slowly, she removed the headphones.
The air suddenly dense around her, like a storm had passed through. Across the table, Jake cursed under his breath. Mia sat frozen, her hands hovering above the keyboard. Was that, she started, voice thin, a hack? Jake finished grimly, already yanking up the server logs. Or an intercept. We were streaming through a secure channel. This wasn't some kid with a VPN. In the chat, the reactions were frenzied. Did that just happen? Evelyn, are you safe? Holy hell. Someone tried to silence her. Again. We stand with Evelyn. Evelyn stood and walked to the window. The movement deliberate, composed. She parted the curtains. The front lawn glowed under the amber haze of the streetlight, untouched and quiet. But her eyes scanned deeper into shadows, into memory. I'm not rattled, she said. I'm confirmed. Jake looked up. You're what? This threat means we've struck something real. Deep. Whoever's behind this isn't angry. We're not just annoying them. We're dangerous. You're not invincible, Grandma, Mia said. We don't know who we're dealing with. That's why we keep going. Evelyn replied. We don't stop just because it gets hard. That's when you start paying attention. Rose showed up the next morning, with pastries and a new deadbolt in her purse. I called a guy, she said without greeting, holding up a small toolkit. And I'm staying for 2 nights. You're not being left alone with anonymous cyber goons sniffing around. Evelyn smirked faintly. What? No shotgun in the trunk. Just muffins. But I'm not above weaponizing sarcasm. Rose replaced the backdoor lock herself while Evelyn brewed coffee. The house smelled like cinnamon and determination. You're sure you want to keep going? Rose asked from the living room, hammer in hand. I've lived through worse than threats. I buried a husband, raised a daughter who couldn't forgive me, sat in empty classrooms after school when no one remembered my birthday. Silence doesn't scare me, but losing people might. Evelyn's lips thinned. I've already lost them once. This time, I'm fighting to earn them back. Meanwhile, Jake and Mia dove headfirst into the technical backend. Server traces, stream logs, suspicious IPs. One bounced from Canada, another masked through a server in Nevada. Nothing definitive, just ghosts wearing firewalls. There's no footprint, Jake muttered, frustrated. Whoever sent that message covered their tracks like a pro. Mia shook her head. Then we build a narrative wall they can't break. We keep control through truth. That night, Evelyn sat alone in her office and wrote a letter, not for lawyers or family, but for the audience that had grown from curious listeners to loyal witnesses. She read aloud as she wrote, "To those listening, I was never trying to be the hero, just honest. If you think I've been too harsh, you're right. If you think I've been too soft, you're also right. The truth is never symmetrical. It bends and hurts and heals. But I won't stop speaking it, even if the next voice I hear is threatening. Especially then." She signed it with her full name. Not Mom, not Grandma. Evelyn Carter. The podcast would post it first thing in the morning. At 2:06 a.m., her inbox chimed. One new message. No subject. An attachment. Family footage _1998. .move. She opened the file. The video played out in Evelyn's dim office, like a crime scene unraveling in slow motion. She watched, heart clenched, as her daughter sat stiffly on a faded plaid couch, 27 years old, hair clipped in a high bun, eyes darting nervously off screen. "Just say it like we rehearsed." A man's voice whispered from behind the camera. Calm, in control. Evelyn leaned forward. She knew that voice. Mark. In the grainy footage, Linda nodded stiffly, then turned toward her toddler son, Jake, barely 4, playing with toy blocks on the carpet. "I don't feel safe leaving him with her sometimes," Linda said, voice robotic, uncertain. "She gets short-tempered. Harsh. It's not healthy." The camera tilted, adjusted. Mark's voice murmured, "Good. Now mention the phone calls." Evelyn clicked pause. The screen froze on Linda's uneasy face. Behind her, Rain began tapping against the windows, soft at first, then insistent. Rose, standing in the doorway, had a hand over her mouth. "He coached her," Evelyn said, voice low and stunned. "This wasn't a memory. This was a script." Jake burst through the door, breathless. "I got Mia, she's uploading the last episode transcript." And he saw the screen. "What's this?" Evelyn didn't speak. She hit play again. Jake watched the scene unfold in silence. His mother, his toddler self, and a man behind the camera shaping narratives like a puppeteer. When the screen went dark, he turned away, jaw clenched. "She lied," he muttered. "For years. Manipulated," Rose corrected gently. "By someone she trusted. That matters too." Jake looked at Evelyn. "What are you going to do?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Her thumb hovered over Linda's name. Then she tapped it. Linda picked up after 3 rings. "What now?" she said, her voice defensive, weary. "I saw the video." Evelyn's tone was sharp as flint. "The one where Mark fed you lines. Told you what to say about me. You let him do it." Silence. Evelyn didn't fill it. She waited. Finally, Linda's voice cracked. "You don't understand what it was like. I was drowning. He said if I wanted custody leverage, if I ever needed to distance Jake from you, I had to get things documented. So you made me the villain. I was scared, Mom. You were ironclad, always right, always watching. I felt like I had to plan my own escape just to breathe." Evelyn closed her eyes, breathing through the sting. "So you lied, or let someone lie for you. And you let that lie rewrite my life." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Linda whispered. "I was trying to gain control in a house where I never had any." "And now?" Evelyn asked. "I want to stop pretending." Later that evening, Mia paced across Evelyn's kitchen. "We can't just sit on the video," she said. "People deserve to know what really happened, but it'll tear things up again." Jake argued. This could undo everything we've rebuilt. Hell, it could blow up Mom's life. Evelyn sat at the table, silent, spinning her wedding ring slowly between her fingers. If we post the video, she said finally, it'll make me look like a martyr and your mother like a manipulator. Mia crossed her arms. So? That's not the truth. That's just another distorted lens. So what's the alternative? Jake asked. I speak it myself. On the podcast. In my voice. With your mother beside me. No edits. No backroom whispers. Jake's eyes widened. You want her on the podcast? She asked for a way forward. I'm giving her one. But I set the rules. The next day, Evelyn called Linda. I want you on the next episode, she said. We lay it bare. No dramatics, just clarity. Linda hesitated. On air. Yes, but on my terms. We talk about the tape, the past, the silence. You don't hide behind Mark or blame fear. You own what happened. Another long pause. I'll do it, Linda said. But I'm not coming alone. What does that mean? There's someone I need you to hear from too. Someone you haven't spoken to since everything fell apart. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Who? But Linda didn't answer. I'll bring them. If we're going to finally tell the truth, it should all come out. The microphone glowed red again, but this time the silence before anyone spoke felt suffocating. Evelyn sat upright in her usual chair, her notes untouched. Across from her, Linda adjusted her sweater sleeves with restless fingers, her jaw tight but her eyes soft with something close to regret. Between them sat a third guest, tall, composed, her voice calm and professional when she introduced herself. Dr. Mariah Jensen, licensed family therapist, and reluctantly Linda's mirror. Jake hit record. Mia didn't look up from her notes, but Evelyn saw the tension in her shoulders. They had all agreed, no edits, no retakes, just the truth. Recorded live. Linda cleared her throat. I spent years building a version of the past that let me sleep at night. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I told myself Mom controlled everything, that she boxed us in, that she was cold. But the truth is, I used those stories to explain away my own fear. Fear of becoming her. Fear of losing control. Evelyn's fingers twitched in her lap, but she stayed quiet. Dr. Jensen turned gently toward her. Evelyn, how does that land? It lands, Evelyn said slowly, like a stone on a frozen lake, loud, but not yet broken. Jake flinched at the metaphor. Linda let out a breath, half laugh, half sigh. I blamed you for being harsh, Linda said. But I never asked why you were so afraid. I never asked what it cost you to hold everything together. It cost everything, Evelyn replied. And I gave it anyway. But I should have known love with strings is just a noose. The room went still. Dr. Jensen leaned forward. That's an extraordinary admission. From both of you. Mia's voice cracked through the silence. Can I say something? Evelyn nodded. I used to think Grandma just wanted to control the story. But hearing you both now, I think she just didn't want it stolen. Jake added quietly. And I think Mom didn't want to be erased either. The therapist smiled. There it is, 2 generations, caught in the middle, protecting their identities by erasing the others. The episode posted 2 hours later. Titled simply, When the Mirror Talks Back. The reactions came in waves. This is the most honest 42 minutes of audio I've ever heard. I called my mother after this. We haven't spoken in 5 years. If Evelyn can forgive, maybe we can too. Evelyn sat with Rose that evening, sipping chamomile and watching the sunset soften the edges of the garden. The house was quiet again, but not the lonely kind. Rose grinned. That was brave. No, Evelyn said. It was overdue. You're not the same woman who answered that first episode through the vent. I still have sharp edges, Evelyn replied. But maybe I'm learning when to set them down. Later that night, Evelyn returned to her desk, scrolling through a flood of unread emails from listeners. In between them, one stood out. Subject: private invitation, Cedar Bay Family Therapy Retreat. A single line in the body read, "We've followed your journey. We'd like to invite you, Linda, Jake, and Mia, for a private guided family weekend." The cedar lodge smelled of pine wood and rain-soaked earth, a strange blend of calm and confrontation. Evelyn Carter stood just inside the glass doors of Cedar Bay Family Retreat Center. Her fingers curled around the leather strap of her tote, her eyes fixed on the hallway, where her family had just walked ahead. No cameras, no microphones, no audience, just bloodlines, bruised egos, and one licensed therapist named Nia, in a navy wool blazer, who greeted them with a soft but deliberate voice. Welcome. It's time to begin. They entered a circular room, no corners to retreat into, no sharp edges. A fire crackled softly in the hearth, but its warmth did nothing to ease the tension between chairs. Day one started quietly. So Nia said, her tone gentle but anchoring. Let's name what you brought into this room. Jake spoke first. Guilt, he said. I aired our family like a Netflix docuseries. That wasn't journalism. That was frustration, dressed up as bravery. Linda scoffed but said nothing. Nia folded her arms. I brought confusion. I wanted answers, but I also wanted to be right. And I don't think those two things can live in the same room. Evelyn looked at them all, then finally said, I brought control. I always do. Nia nodded. Honesty is the first stitch in a tear. By day two, the fire in the hearth wasn't the only thing burning. You made me a villain in your story, Evelyn told Linda. And when it got hard, you handed the pen to Mark. Linda's eyes flashed. Because you held all the pens when I was growing up. You made every decision, from what college I should attend to what shoes I wore to prom. You never left space for me to. You never told me how suffocated you felt. Evelyn snapped. You just slipped out the side door and blamed me for the locks. I didn't know how to tell you. Linda shouted, standing now, fists trembling. You were always so damn composed. You made me feel like my fear was weak. Nia lifted a hand. Anger is welcome here. But if you raise your voice, raise it to be heard, not to shut someone out. Linda sat, breathing hard. Then almost in a whisper, I thought if I let you in again, I'd lose myself all over. Silence. Then Evelyn, in a rare and unguarded moment, spoke without armor. When your father left, I hardened. I didn't know how to be soft and still protect you. I thought love meant shielding you from everything. But maybe I was just afraid of failing twice. That shifted something. Jake leaned forward, elbows on his knee. I never saw that part of you, he said quietly. I only saw the rules, Nia added, and I only saw the fear. But I think you were afraid of not being needed. Evelyn nodded slowly. I was. By day 3, the tone changed. They ate breakfast together, quiet but not cold. Jake helped Rose with her luggage. Linda offered Evelyn her jacket. When the wind picked up, small gestures, but after years of silence, they felt like symphony. In one exercise, Nia drew a large diagram, cycles, patterns, trauma loop. You don't break a pattern by blaming it, she said. You break it by naming it, then choosing differently. Jake stood beside the whiteboard, marker in hand. Maybe we should have called the podcast Inherited Silent. He looked at Evelyn. But I'm glad we didn't, because your voice deserved a second act. Evelyn smiled faintly. Nia added, and so do others like her. We need to find a way to advocate for elder voices and accountability. They're not opposites. That night, Evelyn sat alone on the deck, the lake glistening under moonlight. A rare stillness settled in her bones. For the first time in years, she felt unburdened. Then her phone buzzed. She checked the caller ID. Dr. Lutz, primary care. She answered. Evelyn, the doctor said, voice measured but tight. Your blood work came in. We need to run a few more tests. There are some markers that concern me. The worst part wasn't falling. It was knowing her mind stayed awake while her body betrayed her. Evelyn remembered the exact moment. The soft pop of her hip against the tile. The metallic taste that filled her mouth. And the absolute silence that followed. No screams, no dramatic collapse. Just her, alone on the kitchen floor, watching the world tilt sideways, as her right side froze, and her heartbeat thumped against her ribs like a distant war drum. The ambulance lights reflected against the windows. Then nothing. She woke to the low hum of monitors, the antiseptic sting in the air, and Rose's voice, softly muttering, "You scared the hell out of me, Evelyn Carter." Evelyn tried to smirk. It came out as a twitch. "Didn't mean to make your week interesting," she whispered, her voice hoarse, slurred slightly on the right. "You know I hate hospitals," Rose muttered. "So you really owe me." Jake and Mia arrived an hour later, bursting in like a pair of shaken trees, rooted but rattling. Jake dropped his backpack with a clatter and reached for her hand. "We got here fast. You're okay. You're okay." Mia sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers wrapped gently around Evelyn's. "You don't get to leave the story early, okay?" Evelyn let her eyelids rest for a moment. She didn't cry, but the pressure behind her eyes was warm and constant. By day 3, her speech had mostly returned, slower but deliberate, each word chosen like a stitch, closing an old wound. Jake brought his podcast mic. "I wasn't going to record today," he said, adjusting it near the hospital windowsill, "but it felt wrong not to. Because this is part of the story too." He hit record. "My grandmother had a stroke. Minor, they say. But nothing about it felt small. She's lived 7.5 decades, carried people, held grudges, forgave people who didn't ask for it. And now I'm looking at her in this hospital bed realizing, none of us are as unbreakable as we pretend to be." The next morning, Linda showed up. No makeup, hair undone, eyes tired. Evelyn watched her approach the bed like a courtroom defendant, stepping onto the stand. "I made mistakes," Linda said, sitting down slowly. "I let old bitterness shape how I raised my kids. And when you got sick, it hit me. This could have been the last chapter. And I've wasted so much of it trying to write you out of it." Evelyn studied her for a moment, then nodded once. "So let's stop wasting ink." Jake released the audio later that night, unedited. Linda's voice cracked as she publicly acknowledged her faults, and Evelyn's soft response closed the episode like a door gently clicked shut. The messages poured in again, messages not of drama, but grace. Back home, during recovery, Evelyn sat by the window with her will spread out in front of her, a blue pen in hand. The fireplace crackled beside her, and Rose sat nearby, knitting a scarf the color of dry wine. "Giving them the executor roles?" Rose asked, nodding toward the names. "Big move. They've earned it," Evelyn said. "They know more about my story now than anyone ever has." "You used to think strength meant being in control," Rose said. "Now you're learning it's knowing when to pass the baton." Evelyn didn't answer, but the pen moved with calm, steady purpose. Days later, with birdsong drifting through the open kitchen window, Evelyn poured herself tea. The warmth of the mug felt like home in her palm. Her phone buzzed with a new voicemail. She pressed play, holding the speaker close. Jake's voice, crisp but tender, spoke, "Hey Grandma. We've been talking a lot, and we think it's time for the final episode. Not because the story's over, but because it finally feels complete." The red light blinked one final time. Evelyn exhaled slowly as Jake gave her a nod from across the dining table, where the family had gathered for this last recording. No scripts, no edits, just 4 microphones, the sound of rain on the windows, and decades of baggage ready to be unpacked for the last time. "Welcome back," Jake said. "This is Toxic Elders, the finale. If you've been with us since episode 1, you know this started with pain. And now, we hope it ends with perspective." He turned slightly. "Grandma." Evelyn leaned forward, her voice steady, warm. "When this began, I was accused accurately of being controlling, sharp-tongued, even cruel. I came to this microphone to defend myself. But I stayed because I realized I had something far more important to offer, accountability, and a map for others trying to get home after years of silence." There was a pause. No one interrupted. Her words hung like a warm mist in the air. "I made mistakes," Evelyn continued. "And for those I can't undo, I can only offer what I should have from the start, listening ears, open hands, and the truth." Jake cleared his throat. "We've talked about generational trauma, but we've also learned about generational resilience. And as we close this chapter, we're committing to something new, a series focused on bridging generational divides, conversations with families from across the country. No blame, just truth. Mia chimed in, and we'll be inviting therapists, elders, youth, all of them. Because no one heals alone. Not anymore. Linda shifted slightly in her seat. She hadn't spoken yet, but her hands were folded in her lap, unusually still. I won't be part of the next series, she said finally, voice quieter than usual but not weak. Not because I don't support it, but because I need to do my work privately now. I've said enough publicly. It's time for less volume and more intention. The room absorbed her words like a sponge, and Evelyn, without judgment, nodded. That's fair, she said. After the recording stopped, Rose brought out a small bottle of champagne and 4 mismatched glasses. The cork popped with a dull thud, startling no one. To uncomfortable truths, she toasted, raising her glass. And the people who finally dared to speak them out loud. To not running away from the fire, Jake added, clinking his glass with. Evelyn said nothing, just sipped, smiled, and let the quiet celebration fill the space once filled with tension. Later that night, as the final episode uploaded, Evelyn sat in her favorite chair by the window, with her laptop and a blank document titled "This Is How It Started," a memoir. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. She wrote the first line. They tried to silence. I gave them a microphone instead. By morning, the inbox overflowed. Letters from listeners, therapists, estranged children, and even nursing home staff who had aired episodes during Family Day. One subject line stood out. You gave me my mother back. Evelyn opened the message. Dear Evelyn, I'm 24. I haven't spoken to my mother in 6 years. But last night, I sat outside her apartment door and played her your voice. She cried. I cried. Then we talked. For the first time, really talked. I owe that to you. Thank you, Claire J. The world was quiet again, but this time, it wasn't lonely. Evelyn sat on her porch in a thick knit sweater, the soft click of her pen against the armrest, the only rhythm as the late afternoon sun spilled gold across the yard. Summer had begun its slow, reluctant retreat. The breeze was cooler now, the hydrangeas beginning to curl at the edges. But Evelyn felt more alive than she had in years. No headphones, no blinking record light, no script, just the porch, just the silence, and the steady hum of something repaired. Jake and Mia pulled into the driveway without fanfare. No camera crew, no audio setup, just the squeal of car tires on gravel and the sound of the doors slamming shut. Permission to enter the porch of the infamous Evelyn Carter? Jake called playfully. Evelyn chuckled, already rising. Only if you don't bring up subscribers. Mia wrapped her in a tight hug before she could finish her sentence. No podcasts today, just your grandkids. They sat together, knees brushing, passing around lemon scones from the bakery Mia had brought. They didn't talk about the podcast. They didn't need to. Instead, they reminisced about Jake's Halloween costume from 2009 that made him cry, and the time Evelyn tried to make lasagna and burned the noodles, but pretended it was a crisp-edge trend. Laughter now replaced what once would have been friction. Moments later, Rose appeared, uninvited but expected, carrying a thermos of chamomile and 3 mismatched mugs. Thought you could use something to go with the stories, she said, pouring steam into the cool air. And maybe a reminder, love outlasts conflict, but only if you let it. Evelyn nodded, accepting the tea. And if you stop pretending you're always right. Rose grinned. That too. By early evening, Evelyn retreated to her study. The desk was clean, her favorite pen resting beside a fresh leather-bound notebook. She flipped to the first page and didn't hesitate. The words came easily. This didn't start with a mic. It started with silence. The kind that lives in the gaps between slammed doors, strained holidays, and things left unsaid for years. But when my grandkids gave that silence a stage, I stepped into it, hesitant, angry, afraid, and I told the truth. Her hand didn't shake. She wrote with certainty, her cursive looping like it used to when she signed detention slips. There was power in the act, something private, permanent, hers. Outside the study, the sound of dishes clinking filled the kitchen. Linda was helping Mia and Jake set the table. Mark's quiet voice murmured something about salad dressing. No tension, just life. Evelyn smiled. Later, they gathered around the dinner table. No head of the table this time. Everyone equal, arms brushing, plates shared, old stories resurfacing with humor instead of hurt. Rose raised a glass. To the hard stories, the ones we didn't want to tell, and to the fact we told them anyway. Glasses clinked, laughter spilled across the table, weaving warmth through the walls of a house that once echoed with silence. After everyone had gone to bed, Evelyn stepped back onto the porch, the night thick with the smell of pine and distant smoke from someone's chimney. The moon hung full above the trees. She looked out at the empty yard, her arms folded across her chest. They had made her episode 1, the scapegoat, the villain, the symbol of everything unspoken. And now, without raising her voice, she had spoken.